Have you ever wondered why two kids can go through the exact same difficult situation but have vastly different outcomes? Consider this scenario. Two kids and their families have just moved to a new neighborhood. Both kids have to start at a new school, make new friends, and get used to new routines. It's difficult and a little scary for both of them. Child A struggles. They have trouble sleeping, they cry more often, and resist going to school. At home, they argue more with their siblings, they feel frustrated when things don't go perfectly, and even small challenges seem overwhelming. Child B is also nervous at first. They feel shy and complain about missing old friends, but they try out for the soccer team. They ask classmates to play at recess. They talk with their parents about the highs and lows of each day. Over time, they start to feel more comfortable, make new friends, and settle into the new routine. For these kids, one similar situation led to two different outcomes. But how does this happen? Well, the question isn't why is one kid weak while the other is strong? Rather, it's what makes the difference? And the answer is resilience. Resilience is a child's ability to function competently under threat, recover from intense stress or trauma, and adapt in ways that support healthy development. And the factors that lead to greater resilience don't only come from within the child. These are shaped by ongoing interactions with parents, family systems, and the broader community. To make this easier to understand, let's use a simple formula. Resilience equals protective factors minus risk factors. What are protective factors? These are characteristics that act as buffers against stress and lasting psychological issues. And what are risk factors? Well, the opposite. Anything that adds emotional load to the child's nervous system and reduces coping capacity. The basic concept is when protective factors outweigh risk factors, children have a greater ability to cope, recover, and grow in the face of adversity. This formula can help us understand why the same stress can impact two people differently, and where parents and community members can intervene to have a positive impact. For the purposes of this video, we'll divide protective and risk factors into three general categories. Factors within the child's family, and within the child's community. Let's start with the risk factors within the child. First is the biological and neurodevelopmental load. These affect the brain and body's baseline capacity for regulation and recovery. Examples include premature birth or birth anomalies, exposure to toxins in utero, chronic or serious illness, or developmental delays. These conditions lead to nervous systems that start off carrying more physiological stress. Second is temperament and sensitivity. Temperament refers to the child's innate behavioral style. While each child is unique, researchers describe temperament using three broad, loosely defined categories. Easy temperament, which is more adaptable, engaged, and generally positive. Slow to warm up temperament, more cautious, shy, withdrawn at first, but able to grow more comfortable over time. And challenging, more intense, persistent, emotionally reactive, or strong-willed. From a resilience standpoint, kids with slow to warm up temperament and especially challenging temperament are at greater risk when stress is high and support is low. Now remember, challenging does not mean bad or unlovable. These kids are often just more sensitive, meaning that stress hits harder and faster. And third is psychological and relational stressors. This can include trauma, chronic fear or instability, persistent exposure to threats or chaos, and hostile or unsupportive peer groups. Next, we have risk factors within the family system. First is attachment and lack of emotional safety. In a nutshell, insecure attachment develops in kids that don't trust their caregivers due to inconsistent emotional availability and unsafe psychological conditions. If the children themselves have insecure attachment tendencies, or the caregiver themselves has insecure attachment tendencies, resilience is impacted. To learn more about secure and insecure attachment styles, you can check out this video that I made on that topic. The second risk factor in this category is family system stress. When the conditions in the home increase chaos and unpredictability, chronic emotional volatility keeps the child's nervous system activated. This happens when there's high parental conflict, abuse or neglect in the home, harsh parenting or maltreatment, a high conflict divorce or separation, the death of a parent or family member, or if the child is in foster care. And lastly is parental capacity strain. In other words, the conditions that make it difficult for the caregiver to meet the child's needs. Whether that's because of their own mental health challenges, substance abuse, chronic illness, single parenthood without support, social isolation, or unemployment. To be clear, these are factors that reduce emotional bandwidth for caregivers and are not necessarily signs of failure. They're just conditions to be mindful of as the child is developing their sense of safety and security. The next type of risk factor are the social or environmental risk factors. These are the structural and systemic stressors that that add load to the child's nervous system. Number one is barriers to resources. This includes conditions like poverty or homelessness, lack of access to medical care, including mental health and social services, inadequate childcare, or frequent school changes. These create constant background stress, making higher order needs more difficult to fulfill. And lastly, chronic instability and threat exposure has an impact on resilience. This can include witnessing or being involved in community violence, exposure to environmental toxins, and exposure to racism, discrimination, and violence, including in the media. As we can see, there are a lot of factors that can make it difficult to facilitate resilience. But here's the good news. Resilience is not the removal of stress. It's the presence of abundant protective factors in the face of stress. Some of these protective factors exist within the child. These are the skills and tendencies that the child has that allows them to cope with stress. These internal child factors start with emotional and physiological regulation. This is the child's ability to notice their emotions and body signals, to recover from stress, and to respond intentionally rather than reacting automatically. This leads to more reflective rather than impulsive responses, in which the child can act mindfully rather than feeling powerless or overwhelmed. Also, children with greater awareness of not just their own feelings, but the feelings of others are able to create more supportive relationships and consistently practice empathy. Next is identity and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is defined as an individual's belief in their capacity to achieve goals and accomplish tasks. When children have a positive self-perception, they're more likely to be self-forgiving and identify what they can and cannot control. And third is flexibility and life engagement. This is when children explore and adapt, connect, and stay engaged with life, which includes and promotes curiosity, problem-solving skills, and the development of hobbies and interests. Kids who view difficult situations as challenges to rise up to rather than threats to run away from set themselves up for greater growth and learning. Moving on to protective factors in the family system. These are based on patterns and interactions within the parent-child relationship that help the child to feel safe and secure. And this all starts with secure attachment and emotional safety. Secure attachment develops in kids who do trust their caregivers and feel safe expressing their emotions. When the child is securely attached and the caregiver has secure attachment tendencies, this creates greater opportunities for connection through play, affection, and shared attention. Secondly, we have structure and predictability. This is the degree to which the family environment provides clear and consistent boundaries. This includes household rules and routines that reduce cognitive and emotional load by letting kids know what to expect. And next is teaching and modeling family values. Children learn resilience largely by what they observe within the family system. When caregivers model flexibility and emotional regulation, children learn that stress is manageable and mistakes aren't permanent. The stability of the relationship between caregivers also matters. This doesn't mean that their parents or caregivers don't have any conflict, but it does mean prioritizing emotional safety, cooperation, and repair. And finally, let's talk about the social and environmental protective factors. These shape resilience by limiting the amount of chronic background stress the child lives with day to day. First is basic stability and material security. This starts with a stable home base that supports rest, routine, and a sense of belonging. Stable household income also matters here because predictability serves as a buffer from constant crisis mode. It doesn't have to be a lot, it just has to be enough to keep things stable and predictable. Another layer is access to resources. When families have access to healthcare, mental health support, and social services, challenges are more likely to be identified early and handled effectively. Community supports like childcare, food assistance, or family programs can reduce caregiver overload, which in turn lowers household stress and increases emotional availability for children. And lastly, a sense of belonging within a community plays a huge role. Safe, supportive schools, churches, or other organizations that are responsive to learning and emotional needs help children by offering shared meaning, belonging, and social connection. Now that we've gone over all of the risk and protective factors, let's return to the example of those two children from the beginning. Child A may have had some protective factors, but their risk factors outweighed their protective factors, explaining why the move felt overwhelming and stressful. Child B shared some of those risk factors, but had stronger protective factors, resulting in higher resilience, which is why they were able to adapt, engage, and continue growing. As we can see, resilience is not about toughness. It's not about removing stress. It's not about perfect parenting. It's about balance. When we understand this formula, we stop asking, what's wrong with my child? And start asking, what would tip the balance in their favor? That's where real resilience is built. Thanks so much for staying with me today. I hope you found something in this video that you can use to support the children in your life. Make sure you like and subscribe for more insights on child development. development. And if you have a question or a topic you'd like me to cover, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.